Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. In the first century, if you had treasures, if you had money, possessions, stuff, there were no banks, no safety deposit boxes, no 401ks or IRAs, none of that. And you would take your treasures and dig a hole in the ground, in the back of your house or out in a field or in the back of a cave. Jesus tells a story about a man who finds treasure, buried treasure out in a field, right? You would take your treasures, dig a hole in the ground, and bury your treasures under the ground. Now, here was the problem. Treasures, valuables in Jesus' day, were coins and also were articles of clothing. Unlike the world today, the average man or woman in Jesus' world had only one pair of clothes. Sisters, the shock, the horror, the injustice. Can you imagine, right? And now, clothes and ground don't go together really well. Would you agree? And it was really dangerous because you would bury your treasures, your coins, and your clothing, but now it's susceptible to moths and vermin. The NIV says, literally in the Greek, it's eating. The idea here is rats and mice and worms and dry rot and rust and all sorts of nasty stuff under the ground. And you think you are well off, you think you have a nest egg, you think you are about to retire young, and you go to dig up your treasures, and lo and behold, it's nasty, right? And no more. And Jesus says, okay, don't store up for yourselves and hoard and dig holes in the ground and bury treasures, money, possessions, stuff here on earth. Instead, here's another way to live. Store up for yourselves treasures where? In heaven. That is a really, really easy, not only is that a cliche, but that is really, really easy to misunderstand. And one of the reasons is because that word heaven is really slippery and has all kinds of baggage right now. Because the way that modern Americans use the word heaven is not the same way that first century Jews used the word heaven. To first century Jews like Jesus and Matthew, who writes the Jesus story, heaven was not the place you go when you die. Now, first century Jews like Jesus believed absolutely that death was not the end of the story, that followers of the living God one day would come back to the earth in resurrection and step into the world made new by the Creator God on that day. Absolutely, but they never called that heaven. Never. They called that the age to come. John called it eternal life. Jesus, for the most part, called it the resurrection. Heaven was a different word. Heaven in Jesus' world means God's dwelling place or God's space, the invisible world all around you as close as your skin where God rules and God reigns. And Matthew, on top of that, uses the word heaven as a synonym for God. You remember that from early on in the series? All the other Gospels talk about the kingdom of God, but Matthew talks about the kingdom of what? Heaven, or that word can be translated the heavens. And that's because Matthew writes to really orthodox, hyper kind of conservative Jews who don't say the name of God out loud, which is why he swaps out heaven as a synonym for God. Meaning what? Meaning, store up for yourselves treasure in heaven can be translated, store up for yourselves treasure in God. Now, that's really, really important you get that tweak, because the popular level reading of that line goes along the lines of, hey, don't store up for yourselves treasures, money, possessions, stuff here on earth. Wait for when you die and store up treasures, money, possessions, stuff for, kind of life after death. Now, there are all kinds of problems with that line of thought. The main one is it makes no difference between greedy, materialistic Wall Street capitalists, the 1%, right, that we love, right, and followers of Jesus. Other than that, followers of Jesus are all about delayed gratification, right? Is that what Jesus is saying? Hey, no greed now, save greed for life after death, right? Is that what Jesus, I don't think that's what Jesus is getting at. What Jesus does here, in my opinion, is he compares and contrasts laying up for yourselves treasures on earth now with laying up for yourselves treasures in God now. And he's saying that to store up treasures on earth is to give your money, and more than that, your energy, your time, your whatever you invest, whatever you have to invest, to give your life to things that are passing away now. To store up treasures in the heavens or in God is to invest your life into things that start now and will last into eternity. Dumb examples. You have an extra $30 in your budget or whatever. Option A, to store up treasures on earth, you go tanning. You know who you are, and so do we, right? Because I know what color you are. My skin is olive. No, it's not. Give me a break, right? Now, anything wrong with going? Never mind. I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to ask that question. Option A, okay, how long does that tan last? Not as long as the cancer, right? But what, a week or, that was off color, I'm sorry. Okay, never mind. What, a week, 2, 3, I don't know, you know? Option B is you take that $30, you sponsor a child from Happy Home from the Handicapped or Hands of Hope or World Vision or whatever, and you save a child not only out of abject poverty, but out of lostness from God, and he or she comes into a relationship with the living God. How long will that child last? Forever. Let's say you're a dad. Let's say you work a job like everybody else, and you have a family, and you have a decent job. You work 8, 9, 10 hours a day like everybody else at the office. Option A, if you want to store up treasures on earth, is you really make your life's pursuit that brand new car made in Germany, right? And I don't mean Volkswagen. I have a Volkswagen. There's nothing there to covet, right? I mean, go up from there, right? And you want a car. I drove a car the other day. A buddy of mine has a Range Rover with a heated steering wheel. I did not know heated steering wheels existed a few weeks ago. Now I need one, right? I need one. Eric, I thought I saw Eric over here, owns Freeman Motors. Hook a brother up. I need a heated steering wheel, okay? And let's say, now nothing wrong with heated steering wheels at all. If you have one, I'm jealous. Take me for a ride. I would love to borrow your car. But if you make that your life's pursuit, you make that your goal, and you say, you know what, I'm going to work 10, 11, 12 hours a day, nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to ignore my family, I'm going to come home, my kids are in bed, asleep, and I'm going to give my life, I'm going to go in on Saturdays, I'm going to work my tail off to make the sales, to make more money, to get my brand new car made in Germany or whatever. And you get that car. How long will that, is there anything wrong with that car? No, absolutely not. But how long is that car going to last? How long is that car going to stay? Eric, who owns a motor company, says a long time. He sells German cars. Sorry, Eric, you're going to hate today's talk. I'm sorry. How long is that Toyota going? No, Toyotas last a long time. How long is that whatever, you know? You really want a car made in China? Don't know. I'm tweaked. Never mind. How long is that car going to stay nice? It depends if you have kids or not, for starters, right? Like, it's only a matter of time until dents and dings and stains and scratches. Now, nothing wrong with that at all. But if that's what you give your life to, okay, but it's not going to last. Now, another way to live is to store up treasures in the heavens or in God. And let's say you work 8, 9, 10 hours a day like everybody else. You work hard, you're faithful, steady, industrious employee, and then you go home and you play with your kids. And you read the scriptures to your kids before you go to bed, and you pray over your kids, and you talk about God in whatever way you know how, where you are at, and you help your kids come to know Jesus, and your kids come into a relationship with the living God. How long will your relationship with your kids last? Forever. It will start when? Now, not at death, now. And it will last forever. That's what Jesus says. Listen, feel free to store up treasures on earth, but it's all passing away right now as we speak. There's another way to live where your treasures are in God and your joy starts now, not at death, now, and lasts into eternity. Now, if that confuses you, it gets worse. 22. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If you have glasses right now, feel guilty. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Okay, really easy to understand. The eye was a Hebrew euphemism for how you handle money. In Jesus' world, if you had money, if you had wealth, if you were well off, blessed by God, and if you were generous, if you would share with the poor, and remember, huge numbers of people in Jesus' world live in abject poverty. Roman Empire taxes are at 70 to 90%, historians think, right? Huge numbers of people need food, water, and clothing. And if you are well off, you have extra, and you share your extra with those in need. People said you have a healthy eye or a good eye. But if you were well off, but you were greedy and stingy, and you would hoard money for yourself and bury your money under the ground and not share with those in need all around you, people said you had an unhealthy eye or an evil eye. Jesus says, listen, if your eye is healthy, if you look out on the world and you see those in need all around you, and you see those in your city, in your country, in your world in need, and you see God's heart for the poor, how God is on the side of the poor, if you see God's kingdom in breaking over the world, how God is bringing justice to the world, and he's bringing justice through his followers, sons and daughters of God all over the planet, and you join in that story, and you join in that kingdom, and you operate as a conduit for God's blessings. When God puts money, possessions, stuff, treasures into your life, you don't simply hoard, you enjoy and gratitude, but you also share and you pass the blessing on, and you live and you are generous. When you live like that, Jesus says, your whole body will be full of light. Every square inch of your being will be filled with God's life. But if you're not generous, if you're greedy, if you want more and you want more, if you look out on the world with an unhealthy eye, with an evil eye, and all you see is treasures on earth, and all you see is I want more of this and more of that and more of the other, and all you want is consume, 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 it's going to contort and corrupt you from the inside out. Your whole body will be full of darkness. All joy, all peace, all life dissipates into thin air. Two different ways of living, generosity and greed. And by the way, note that the opposite of greed is not poverty. Jesus is not saying, quit your job, go live on a concrete floor and eat crust of bread and water, right? The opposite of greed is generosity, where you are blessed and you work hard and you are industrious, but you don't hoard, you're not a miser, you share, you bless, you pass God's blessings on. I love how counterintuitive the way of Jesus is, right? That gospel, that message is the opposite of the gospel of Washington Square. Am I right? Right? The gospel of Washington Square, the gospel of materialism, the gospel of Sky Mall, right, says, hey, when you have desires for more stuff, how do you satisfy those desires? Yeah, you buy more stuff. And if you don't have the money, here's a scrap of plastic, right? When you have desires, the way you satisfy is you go out and you buy more stuff. Is that true or false? It's false. You all know that. Or if you're young, you're like, really? It's false. You buy one thing, you want 10 more, right? You test drive your friend's car. Now you need a heated steering wheel, right? Things you don't, like you want more. It's never enough. You think it's going to satiate your hunger. In reality, it fuels your hunger. That's the problem with stuff. It's not that stuff is bad. It's that it's never enough. It's a black hole. It never satisfies. It never fulfills. And every marketing ad on the planet works on the worldview. If you get this, then you will be happy. And it's a full-blown myth of capitalistic propaganda. Jesus' way, Jesus' gospel is that, hey, listen, that's not true. What Jesus says is that generosity is God's cure for greed. That generosity is God's antidote to that disease of I want more and I want more and I want more and it's never enough and it's never enough and this and that and the other. And generosity is how you get free from that. Because God is generous. You guys all understand that, right? That's what God is like. He's generous. He shares. He's rich, and he shares his bounty with God's world. And we, as followers of God, are called into that lifestyle. You guys are like that. I mean, you are a generous, amazing crew of people. Right? Last week's special offering for people in need from Solid Rock was, I think, $43,000. Well done. You guys are amazing. This morning, right before the 8 a.m., some dude, I have no idea who, walks up to one of our pastors and hands him a check for $32,000. Says, hey, man, we really believe in the mission of Jesus here in the city. Keep up the good work. You know, that's insane. You're like, that's like my yearly salary, right? Like, you are a generous, amazing crew of people. Keep up the amazing work, but remember that is the way of Jesus. And do not go the way of greed. Do not go the way of more and more and more. It's never enough. Jesus says, live generous. Store up treasures in God and live generous with your money, your stuff, your possessions. Now he goes on, 24. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, if you have a decent memory or you have an older translation of the Bible, you know that in lots of versions, that word money is capitalized. And in other versions, that word is actually the word mammon. And that's because, as you know, you are reading the English, but it's translated from the Greek. Matthew writes in Greek. But that word is not actually the Greek word for money. It's actually the Hebrew word mammon. And to the Hebrews, mammon was more than simply money, more than simply possessions and stuff and valuables and things. Mammon was the kind of pseudo-spiritual force, or dare I say God, at the back of the human craving for money and possessions and things and stuff. And Jesus says you cannot serve, and that word serve can be translated worship. You cannot serve, you cannot worship both God and money, capitalized, or mammon. He names money as a rival god. In fact, it's the only time Jesus ever calls another god by name. Never says anything about Aphrodite or Diana or Zeus, but he calls money out. Now, I really don't like that. Because I want to think that money is neutral, that money is not good or evil, that there's no problem with money. The only problem is my heart, right? And my heart towards money. I wish that was true. But to Jesus, there is a problem with money. I mean, yes, technically, money is neutral. A scrap of green paper with Benjamin Franklin on front, technically is an inanimate object. But we all know that's only half the story. Am I right? We all know when it comes to money and possessions and stuff that it has a power, it has a sway, it has a pull, it has a pseudo-spiritual force that drags you into its orbit like a tractor beam that pulls you in. I'm not immune. I know I like nice stuff, right? I know when it pulls you in and you want and you want and Jesus gets that. And notice Jesus says you cannot serve both God and money. Not you should not. Please understand that. He does not say, hey, everybody, I know that right now you're serving God and you're serving money. You should stop that. Shame on you. He says you cannot. It's not an option. Like serving God and serving money is not on the table. Like it's impossible. Now, I really want to prove Jesus wrong. To be honest, I want to worship God. I mean, absolutely. Are you kidding? I love God. I absolutely want to worship God. And I want more money and more stuff and more possessions. I don't get, Jesus, why the two are mutually exclusive. I mean, why do I have to pick? And Jesus says it's because that's not how it works. It's not neutral per se. It pulls your heart away. There's another story Jesus tells about 4 different kinds of soil, and it's a long kind of farming metaphor. And Jesus talks about how the soil, if you know the story, with thorns stands for the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of wealth that pulls your heart away. And Jesus says it's only a matter of time before you fall off the fence on one of two sides. Either you will end up in the worship of money, or you will end up in the worship of God. And Jesus' point here is pick. Pick. He's not saying you have to live in abject poverty, per se. He's simply saying store up treasures in God, live generous, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, it doesn't matter. Share with those in need around you, and don't worship money, worship God. Now, really chipper, nice, fun stuff. Hope you're going to have fun shopping this afternoon. Right? Let's move on. You all hate me right now. I'm sorry. Blame Jesus, not me. 25. Therefore, I tell you. Now, please wake up, pay attention, circle, star, underline that word, therefore. Please get that. Jesus is not onto a new subject. We're about to study what I think is one of the most misunderstood passages in all of the Bible, and I think it's misunderstood because people divorce what Jesus is about to teach from everything right before. First, Jesus talks about money. Store up treasures in God. Put your heart, your treasures, your valuables there. Then Jesus talks about generosity. Live with open fists and open hearts. Then Jesus talks about idolatry, how you chase after God or money. Pick one God. And then Jesus talks about 25. I tell you, do not worry about your life. What you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Do you think that's an accident that Jesus moves from money, generosity, idolatry to worry? I don't think so. That's why it's called the Sermon on the Mount, not like the random bits of thought on the Mount. Right? Because it's one flow of thought. And Jesus connects the dots between money and worry. How crazy is that? I mean, you all know Jesus is right. Right? The myth is the more money you make, the less you will worry. Is that true? No. And in fact, but that's the myth. I mean, that money buys you safety and security and a life free from anxiety. That is a full-blown myth. The true story is that the more money you have, half the time, money creates more worry. Now you have something to worry about. Right? Now you have stuff. Now you need to worry, what if somebody stains your stuff or dents your stuff or dings your stuff? Or what if your kids track mud in on top of your brand new stuff? Or what if now you... I'm the only one with problems. Okay. You're like, what is wrong with you? I'm sorry. That is American walnut, okay? My goodness, right? Like... And now you need insurance on your stuff, and you need, storage units for your stuff, and you need an extra house for your stuff, and now you need 2 houses for your stuff, and you need an extra job, you need holy cow, it's more, and now you have something to worry about. Jesus is brilliant. He says, listen, if you go down that path, more and more and more, okay, but the end of that is simply worry. Do not, Jesus says, worry. Here's a whole other way to live. Look what Jesus says next, 26. Look at the birds of the air. And remember, Jesus is outside. He's outdoors on the side of a mountain. He says, okay, look around you. Look up to the sky. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or stow away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? What's the answer? No, but I hear that stress is not awesome for your health, 28, and why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. Look to your right, your left. You're down on the grass. Look at the flowers. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry. That can be translated, do not be filled with anxiety, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? Remember, the majority of Jesus' listeners are here, are poor, living hand to mouth, right? 4:32, the pagans run after all these things. And pagans in Jesus' world is not a pejorative. It simply means Gentiles or people who don't know the Creator God. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Now, as much as I love that, because of the poetry, I think that is one of the most misunderstood passages in all of the Bible. Because here's how I used to read the text, and I think I am not alone. I think I am like lots of people. the popular reading is, hey, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. Look at the birds. Look at the flowers in the field. Like, you're way more important than birds. You're way more important to God than flowers. Relax. It's all going to work out. Don't worry. And it's like Jesus' Bob Marley moment, It's like, don't worry about a thing, right? Every little thing's going to be all right, child, right? Like, relax, don't worry, nothing bad is going to happen. Don't worry, be happy. And Jesus here is like part hippie, part self-help guru, right? Don't worry, look at the birds, look at the flowers, relax, it's all going to be okay. There are serious problems with that reading. The main one is that it's not true. That's a serious problem. The only people with the audacity to read the text like that are Americans, like me and you, who live in nonstop safety and security for the most part. Get on a plane. Go to the majority world. Go to Haiti. How many of you have been to Haiti? Go to Zimbabwe. Unemployment's at 90% right now. And there are millions of followers of Jesus who love God, who right now, as we speak, are hungry and thirsty, who don't have food, who don't have water, people who love God, men, women, children, who are victims of injustice and suffering, pain, persecution, torture, death. Tell that to them. Hey, don't worry, it's all going to work out. Really? Tell that to them. If that's what Jesus is saying, you have a serious problem on your hands. Either Jesus is wrong, or the Bible is wrong, or the Hallmark Christianese Christian bookstore version of the story is wrong. I think it's the last one. I don't think that what Jesus is doing here is cliche at all. I think it is radical and subversive, and the undercurrent is really scary and really, really important. I think that the critical line is what Jesus says at the end. He does not end with "do not worry." That part's in the middle. He ends with, hey, the pagans, people who don't know God, run after, chase, hunt down all these things, money, possessions, stuff. But you, God's children, God's sons and daughters, you are to seek first. And in the Greek, it's the exact same word as run after. You are to run after. You are to seek first. You are to chase down. You are to make your top priority God's kingdom and God's righteousness. You are to make that your treasure. That is your God. That is your ultimate, to chase after God and your relationship with God and his inbreaking kingdom over your life and around the world, what God is up to in the world, and his righteousness. Remember that word righteous? In Matthew means right relationships with God, with people around you, your brothers, your sisters, with the poor. There are all sorts of overtones of justice at the back of the word righteous. In fact, one of the leading theologians I know translates the word unrighteous as when you have extra stuff and you don't share with people in need. I hate that translation. I want unrighteous to mean you're a murderer. Okay, I'm righteous. I don't want that to mean you have extra stuff and you don't share. Jesus says, seek, chase after God, God's kingdom, God's righteousness, how he's just and how he shares and he's generous and he lives with joy and life. Make God's kingdom your top priority, what you are chasing after. Now notice Jesus' flow of thought. Money, treasures in God. Generosity, share, you're blessed, be a blessing. Idolatry, make sure that your ultimate goes by the name God, not money, not stuff, not possessions. Worry, anxiety, your fears, what keeps you up at night. And then he comes back to, where's your heart at? What are you chasing after? What's your pursuit? What's your God? What's your ultimate? What is Jesus doing? He is connecting the dots between what you worry about and what you worship. And he's saying that anxiety is rooted in idolatry, right? That we worry about what we worship. If your God, your ultimate is money, what are you going to worry about? Anybody? Money, right? stuff, the market, the Eurozone, the value of the dollar, your investments, your IRA, whatever. If your God is youth and beauty, what are you going to worry about? Wrinkles, thank you, right? Stretch marks, blotchy skin, hair changing colors, hey, hair falling out, right? Like, you're going to worry about all of that. Old age. Listen, newsflash, old age is going to happen, my friends. Best case scenario, you procrastinate. Like, best case. But if that's your God, wow, that's what you're going to worry about. If your God is popularity, what are you going to worry about? Yeah, your reputation. Front row is on fire this morning. Everybody else, hard crowd, but you guys, I love you. You're going to worry about what people think of you. You're going to worry about your image. Are you hip? Are you stylish? Are you in vogue? Or you have friends on Facebook? Does anybody read your blog? No. Like, you're going to worry about all of that. If your God is marriage and you're single, what are you going to worry about? Will I ever get married? Will a man ever find me attractive? Will a woman ever find me charming? Will this, that, this year? Now, we worry about what we worship. Now, I'm not saying that 100% of anxiety is rooted in, idolatry, but I think the vast majority is. Would you agree? I think that's what Jesus is saying. When Jesus holds up birds and flowers, I love what he does with the metaphors of birds and flowers. He's not holding up birds and flowers as examples of like a life of safety and security. He's not saying, look at the birds. Nothing bad ever happens to birds. What? Birds and... That was awesome. Like he's not saying, nothing bad ever happens. Birds were food in Jesus' day. Really common market. You would walk through the market and there were birds for sale, dead birds all over the place for food. He's not saying, hey, look at the birdies. God loves you way more than the birdies. Nothing bad happens to the birdies. No. Grass, flowers. He's not holding up flowers as examples of safety and security. Hey, nothing bad ever happens to flowers. Really? I mean, the next line is, flowers are here today and tomorrow we're thrown into the fire. Nobody likes to quote that one. Oh, you're like a flower to God. Yeah, that tomorrow is thrown into the fire, right? We don't like that line. Flowers all over the scriptures are a metaphor for the fragility of human life. Psalm 103 and all sorts of other places says that man is like a flower. The wind passes over it and it is gone. He is holding up, I think, birds and flowers as examples, not of safety and security, but as examples of a life free from anxiety. When was the last time you saw a stressed out flower? Right? Oh no, what if somebody steps on me? What if the herbicides aren't organic? Like what if, When was the last time you saw a stressed out bird? Squirrel? Yes, but bird? That's why Jesus says nothing about squirrels. When was the last time? Birds sing, birds dance, birds play in God's beautiful world. Birds enjoy God's bounty. And Jesus is saying, listen, you are way more important to the Father than birds and flowers in the field. And if birds and flowers bask in the Father's love and creation and beauty and grace and enjoy life one day at a time and are free from anxiety, how much more does the Father want that for you? Does the Father want you to live like that, free? You can live free from anxiety. But there's a catch, and it's a beautiful one. Jesus says, in order for that to happen, you have to look deep inside your heart. And you have to trace your anxiety back to your heart and find the idolatry. Find where your treasures are in the wrong spot. Because if you treasure the wrong stuff, it leads to anxiety. But if you treasure God, it sets you free. That's why Jesus closes with, and look what Jesus says last, 34. Therefore, in light of all of that, when you get to that spot where you abandon your treasures on earth and you are free from all of that, and your treasure is the Father. Well, for starters, then you can actually enjoy life. I love what he says right before that. All these things will be given to you as well. Then stuff, money, possessions, then it's all bonus. Jesus is not down on stuff. He's down on the way it consumes and corrupts people. Then you get to enjoy life because that stuff is no longer your God's. And if it's here one day and gone the next, okay, that's not your treasure. And if you're rich or if you're poor, okay, that's not your treasure. Then you can actually enjoy God's beautiful world. And then he says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. I love that. Then you can not worry about the future. 99% of anxiety is rooted in the future. It's all about the what ifs of life. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if the other happens? And you lie awake. Your mind is a year from now, a month from now, a day from now, a decade from now. You fear, keeps you up at night. Listen, if you're going to live a really lousy situation, only live it once. Don't live it over and over and over again. And Jesus says you can let go of the what ifs. You can let go of fears about the future. You can let go of what if this happens? What if that happens? Because that's no longer your treasure. Now, if that's your treasure, whoa, you don't get to let go of anything. Because if that doesn't happen, wow, you are in serious trouble. If your treasure is something in the future, or if it's this, or if it's that, or if it's what people think of you, or it's popularity, you have tons to worry about. But if your treasure is God, here and now, in the moment, come what may, that's not your treasure. And you can let go of your fears, and you can let go of your anxiety. And right now you can live in the Father's love. And Jesus ends with, each day has enough trouble of its own. I love how honest Jesus is. He's not a self-help guru. No decent self-help guy would end a talk with, each day has enough trouble of its own. Right? That's not how you end a pep talk. He says, listen, I know life is hard. You have enough trouble here today. Don't worry about tomorrow. He is not inviting you to a life free from trouble at all. Another spot, he says, in this world, you will have trouble, period. End of story. No matter who you are, some of you more than others. You will. My life has been easy for the most part by the grace of God, but it has not been without troubles. He's honest. But he is inviting you to a life free from anxiety. Where come what may, whether your life is easy or hard, whether you're rich or poor, whether you have stuff or you, it doesn't matter, because that's not where your treasure is at. Your treasure's not in the future, and your treasure's not in things, and it's not in stuff, and it's not in what people think of you, and it's not of your position, it's not in your prestige, it's not in the next job or the next promotion, it's not in this or that, or if you make it, or if you don't, or marriage, or it's not in that stuff. And if you get that stuff, it's all bonus and grace. But your treasure is right here and right now in God. Now, I have no idea where today's Jesus' teaching here hits you. For me, it's like right in the nose, right? I think I've been honest with you guys over the years that I speak out of my weakness. The majority of you know that today. Like, over the years, my hands down #1 struggle has been with anxiety and depression. It's been a huge, massive, gaping flaw and issue and problem and struggle in my life for the last 12 years. And God's done an amazing work in my life, healing me from the inside out. I am not the man I was a few years back. But I'm a work in progress. And I think I'm not alone. In fact, I know I'm not alone. We're Americans. We know all about anxiety. Right now, at any given moment, 1 in 5 Americans are on antipsychotics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You. Right? 1 in 5 at any given moment. Last year, true story, last year in 2010, there were 253 million prescriptions for antidepressants in the US. There are only 311 million people in the US. Here we are, we make up about, 5% of the world's population? We take 90% of the world's drugs for anxiety and depression. And we have more money than any other nation in the history of the world. How are we doing on the anxiety part? We're Americans. We know all about anxiety. We know all about turmoil on the inside. I know that from experience on a daily basis. I know what anxiety feels like. The tight chest, the shallow breathing. You can't hold still. You can't take a deep breath. Your mind will not turn off like a machine gun, rapid fire. Well, your heart will not slow down when you cannot breathe. I know what that feels like. And I also know that Jesus is dead right. The vast majority of my anxiety comes from where my treasure is. My treasure is in the wrong place. And the invitation of Jesus is not to a life free from trouble, but it's to a life free from anxiety. You can live, John Mark, free from anxiety. You can live, brothers, sisters, free from anxiety when you store up treasures in God. You know, I'm a dad, like lots of you here, and one of my favorite things about being a dad is to learn from my kids. I think children are teachers. And I think it's not an accident that when Jesus talks about greatness in the kingdom of God, he takes a kid and he puts a 4-year-old up on a platform and says, "Here, everybody, greatness." And one of the things I love about my 2 boys who are 3 and 6, that my boys are simply not stressed out. At all. Like I am. There's a few things I'm stressed out about, a few money things right now. I mean, church takes amazing care of me. I'm 100% fine. But you know, we have a new baby coming, and it's super expensive to adopt, and we have a few medical bills for one of our boys, and we need a new car, and I need a new car with a heated steering wheel. And, right, you know, and we have enough money for like a used minivan, but nope, it needs to be made in Sweden with a heated steering wheel for me, right? And you know, but my 6-year-old Jude simply refuses to worry about that. He does not care. How are we going to pay for Christmas and the medical bills and the baby and a new car all in like a 3-month time period? He's like, I don't care. Let's play, right? And that's my treasures. I have enough money. I'm fine. Are you kidding me? I live like a king, but I want more. My 3-year-old, I worry about the future all the time. What's going to happen here? What's going to happen with the church? What's going to happen with this, that, the other? You know, when I sit down and ask my 3-year-old what his plans are for the day, he just looks really confused. You know, like, what plans? I'm playing Legos? Does that count? Like, I don't understand the question, you know? Like he's simply, and the point Jesus is getting at here is not, hey, quit your job, relax, listen to Bob Marley, and don't make any plans for you. At all. It's not at all what Jesus is saying. But he is saying live like a son, live like a daughter, live like a child of the Father. My sons are happy and at peace. They have a dad. They know dad's going to take care of them. And they know that doesn't mean that life will never have problems and life will never have issues. But they know that, hey, I'm safe today, I'm okay today, I'm with my Father today, and that's enough. And they take delight in every single day and every single hour and every single moment. My boys simply delight in God's world. Gosh, I want to live like that. Gosh, I want that kind of life. And that is what Jesus invites you to. And that is what Jesus invites me to live like a son, to live like a daughter, to let go and abandon your treasures on earth, and to put your treasure into stuff that money cannot buy and that hardship cannot take away, because your treasure goes by the name Jesus.